So let's start here today. Let's start with the science of the winter solstice. Because of the tilt in the Earth's axis of rotation, the sun appears to rise and fall in our sky over the course of a year. It's not the sun itself moving, but the Earth moving relative to the sun. The Earth's axis currently points in a northerly direction close to the second magnitude star, Polaris, also known as the pole star. Everything in the sky, including the sun, appears to revolve around this almost fixed point in the sky. Because the Earth's axis points to Polaris no matter where Earth happens to be in its orbit, the sun appears to move over the year from 23.5 degrees north of the celestial equator on June 21st to 23.5 degrees south of the celestial equator on December 21st. In the northern hemisphere, as summer advances to winter, the points on the horizon where the sun rises and sets advance southward each day. The high point in the sun's daily path across the sky, which occurs at local noon, also moves southward each day. At the winter solstice, the sun's path has reached its southernmost position. The next day, the path will advance northward. However, a few days before and after the winter solstice, the change is so slight that the sun's path seems to stay the same or stand still. The sun is directly overhead at high noon on winter solstice at the latitude called the Tropic of Capricorn. In the northern hemisphere, the solstice days are the days with the fewest hours of sunlight during the whole year. December 21st, the sun stops moving southward, pauses, and then starts moving northward. This pause is called the solstice, from the Latin words sol, S-O-L, for sun, and sisto, S-I-S-T-O, meaning to stand still or to stop. This celestial occurrence and this date has been extremely important to both ancient and modern humanity. All right, so that's the science of the winter solstice, one of 4 stops on the Earth's annual journey around the sun, occurring on December 21st of each year. Now, the other 3 stops are the vernal or spring equinox in March, the summer solstice in June, and the fall equinox in September. That's the science. That's the secular side of the solstice. Now let's talk about the spirit of the winter solstice, the sacred side. Now, the term pagan was first used by Southern Europeans in late antiquity to describe those whose religious beliefs were different from their own. The whole notion of paganism was created by the early Christian church. It was a label, a pejorative, a derogatory tag placed on people who did not subscribe to the tenets of Christianity, to quote-unquote non-believers in the Abrahamic religions of Judaism and Islam as well. Many Christians term pagan anyone venerating or quote-unquote worshiping more than one deity or quote-unquote God. So through the Christian lens, the hundreds and even thousands of years of human history before Christ were all pagan years. Some Orthodox Christians view all of these polytheistic people and their culture as pagan because they acknowledged, respected, and venerated a pantheon of nature spirits and energetic beings. Many Christians paint the entire existence of mankind before Christ as a pagan world. Dark and demonic, unsaved and uncivilized, evil, and to be wholly dismissed and disregarded. So when we talk about the spirit of the winter solstice, we have to first understand who we're talking about. Are we talking about the spirit of Christian celebrations, or are we talking about the spirit of so-called pagan observances of the winter solstice? Christians and pagans, is there any common ground? So, brothers and sisters, let us travel back to the 2nd century That will put us in the years roughly 100 to 199 in what is known as the Common Era after the resurrection of Christ. And let us make our way to the streets of 2nd century Rome and to the exact day of December 17th, where a festival of lights leading up to the winter solstice is being hosted by the government and enjoyed by Roman citizens. Burning candles, symbolizing the quest for knowledge and truth, are ubiquitous. Public revelry ensues. Gambling and dice playing, usually prohibited, is now freely allowed and encouraged. Schools are closed. Courts are not in session. In fact, all forms of work are halted for 3 days. And on the first day, December 17th, people gather at the temple of Saturn, 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 in the Roman Forum for a sacrifice to that deity. And then they make their way to a huge public banquet, followed by private gift giving. In the streets, a carnival atmosphere engulfs the environment, characterized by overeating and drunkenness, and by role playing and role reversals. Slaves wore their masters' clothing without fear of punishment, and masters served their slaves gourmet meals without shame. And naked singers walked the streets in song and dance, engaging in lewd behaviors with one another and willing passers-by. On the second and third days, that would be December 18th and 19th, families conducted private rituals at home. The wealthier Romans bathed early in the morning. Not back then, everybody didn't bathe. So on the second and third days, the wealthier Romans would bathe early in the morning, and they would set about sacrificing a suckling pig as an offering to the deity. So, brothers and sisters, we have landed right in the middle of the ancient Roman festival of Saturnalia. Saturnalia, 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 the ancient annual Roman midwinter festival, a celebration leading into the winter solstice. Now, old world pagans celebrated Saturnalia for hundreds of years, and remnants of those traditions are still practiced by neo-pagans today. In fact, if you look closely enough, you can still see how some of those old pagan practices show up in some Christian Christmas traditions today here in the New World. Saturn Day. Now, I want you to think about the personality and character of the day, Saturday. Most of us do not have to work. We have the day off. Our regular work routine is suspended, and we are free to do whatever we want to do. Our whole mindset is different on Saturday. We give ourselves license to go places, to do and eat things that are generally out of the norm for us during the work week. Saturday brings with it a whole different vibe. And when I say to you, oh, he's a Saturday night kind of guy and she's a Sunday morning kind of gal, you immediately know exactly what I'm talking about, because Saturday, Saturn Day, even today, is associated with Saturday Night Fever, a day of partying and revelry, a day when you do exactly what you want to do with no work restrictions holding you back. Saturday, Saturn Day, Saturnalia. So that's how some of the ancient so-called pagans did it. Christians and pagans, is there any common ground? There has long been a relationship, a correspondence, if you will, with the astronomical sun in science and the spiritual sun in Christian religious theology. For some people, both then and now, the winter solstice is celebrated as the new birth of the sun, the sun in science. And for many other people, both then and now, the winter solstice is completely incidental to the religious observance of the birth of Jesus the Christ, as celebrated by many on December 25th. Many of the Catholic faithful mark this day with the Feast of the Nativity, or the Feast of the Birth, which is one of 12 great feasts the Orthodox Catholic Church observes throughout the year. 9 months before the Feast of the Nativity, the birth of Christ, Catholics observe the Feast of the Annunciation, the Feast of the Annunciation, marking the action initiating the incarnation of Christ. That's the moment when the angel Gabriel announced to the Virgin Mary that she was, quote unquote, with child, as laid out in Luke 1:26 through 38 and Matthew 1:18 through 21 in the Holy Bible. Now, those chosen dates have cosmic symbolism. The Feast of the Nativity occurs on December 25th around the winter solstice, and the Feast of the Annunciation occurs 9 months earlier on March 25th around the time of the spring equinox. And the summer solstice in June is celebrated by many Catholics as the birth of John the Baptist. And the fall equinox, 9 months earlier, is celebrated as the conception of John the Baptist. So that's how modern Catholics do. That's how they use the celestial events occurring in science to venerate their saints and Savior on this terrestrial plane of human existence. Now, for both the sacred and the secular, the cosmic symbolism of the winter solstice, it points to the cycle of life, to the circle of growth and decay, of death and rebirth, and finally to regeneration and renewal once more. For many of the ancients, the sun was a sign and a symbol, a sign and a symbol, a physical visible sign that points to a spiritual, invisible presence. Think about that. And a physical, visible symbol of an even greater invisible force or principle in the universe, which human beings have over time called many names, including God.